moderating a session to hear one of the very, very well-known personalities in the field of ENT. He is none other than Professor Dr. Prakash Moonka ji. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so Dr. Prakash Moonka, sir, is known to everybody here, also everywhere. And I want to read a little bit of his biodata. Dr. Prakash Moonka is actually from MGM Medical College, Jamshedpur, and joined Department of General Surgery at Bokaro General Hospital. 900 bedded. There's a lot of ambient noise. Can you mute everybody?
Charlie, mute everyone.
Mute everybody except me, please. Yeah. So general surgery at Bokaro General Hospital, a 900-bedded tertiary care hospital run by a government of India, India, PSU, SAIL, Bokaro Steel Plant. It imparts DNB training in most of the subjects, presented papers and publications in Association of Surgeons of India, then ENT from RIMS Ranchi in 1992. He joined Bokaro in the Department of ENT, was a DNB examiner in ENT, had advanced practical training at KM Hospital, Mumbai, and Saudi Arabia for 2 years on Government of India assignment and worked as consultant of ENT in MOH, Ministry of Health in Saudi Arabia, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, visited many ENT centers in America as a visitor to understand working in an international atmosphere where there were doctors and paramedics from different countries. And he retired from the job of Bokaro as Joint Director and Head of Department of ENT in November 2018. He was in charge of Academic Committee, Mortality Review Committee, and Hospital. And finance, presently working in private, has presented papers in most of the national and international conferences. He has won many awards, AOI gold medal for the best poster 2 consecutive years, and a silver the next. He had won a consultant award paper and ISO poster award, to name just a few. Also gold medal for ICS, International College of Surgeons, Indian After Conference, and of course, this is what I know. And
Thank you.
He is he's such a friendly person. I always say when you keep smiling, it in fact, more infective than corona. Smile is more infective than corona. And he actually, when he comes and smiles, the whole atmosphere becomes happy. So we're all very happy to all have him here. And he's going to talk on a very, very common topic, but a very important topic. And that is going to be past, present, and future of adenotonsillectomy. Over to you, Dr. Prakash Moonka ji.
Thanks, Dr. Janki. First of all, to accept my request to moderate the session, because I thought if you are there, it will be a great strength to me. And you agreed to moderate a topic on such a basic topic. I was a bit scared to ask you, but I am indebted to you for that. I sincere, heartfelt thanks to Alembic and Mr. Harpreet and all the team to organize this. My introduction also, you said something, I don't know whether I really deserve that or not. To coming to the topic, tonsillectomy is a very, very common topic. And why I thought of speaking on this. Basically, if you see, 2005, there used to be a lot of papers, publications on this. I myself published paper in our journal about the ligation versus bipolar diathermy in tonsillectomy. We had workshop on harmonic scalpel tonsillectomy in our hospital by Professor N. Datta in 99 and in my hospital. But suddenly we find from 2005 to almost 2012, there was hardly on any of the conferences on tonsil, as if it was no all type subject. And in the conference, if somebody is speaking, people used to say, oh, what to listen. It is no all type. Suddenly, after 2012, with the advent of the power
Sorry,
instrument.
Are you
sorry for interruption, sir.
talking from
Sorry.
your presentation, or you're just giving an introduction?
No,
Dr.
I'm
Mukherjee. Dr.
screen.
Mukherjee, are you?
Okay.
Are you?
Share your screen, sir.
Please share your presentation. If you're.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Perfect.
that this topic is very relevant. From 2012 onward, there were a lot of presentation on tonsillectomy by different authorities. In the lockdown period also, we had almost 6 webinars. All these made most of the people confused as to probably without powered instrument, if they are doing tonsillectomy by cold instrument, are they not up to the mark, or they are compromising with the treatment of the patient. In this background, I thought I should speak on this topic to get some clarity of our thoughts. I will speak evidence-based from literature and latest edition of Scott Brown and practical approach which I have been going through. So this is my topic. It is not moving. Yeah. So we know tonsillectomy, despite being less performed nowadays, is still a very common surgery performed by ENT surgeons across the globe. In US, the incidence has declined in last 50, 60 years, but still around 287,000 tonsillectomy with or without adenoidectomy were done. Of this, 129,000 children underwent adenoidectomy alone without tonsillectomy. In UK, as per the NHS statistics, the popularity of tonsil removal has already plummeted in recent years. In 50s, almost 250,000 tonsillectomy used to be done, and today the figure is around 40,000. I will discuss in these heads like history, different modalities, changing indications over the period of time, tonsillectomy, adenoidectomy, or both, what should be done. All of us are aware that first tonsillectomy was done almost 2000 years ago in Rome by Celsus. He applied vinegar with a cotton ball for hemostasis.
Dr. Mukherjee, can you raise your voice, please?
Yeah. Can you listen me now?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Is it? Glenn was the first to advocate use of surgical instrument, that is snare. Then Paulus in the 7th century described detailed procedure for tonsillectomy. Phillips introduced tonsillotome, a guillotine method, which was later known as by became more common to perform complete rather than partial removal of tonsil. After Bellinger noted that partial removal completely alleviates symptoms in a majority of cases. His results using technique involving removal of tonsil with scalpel and forceps were much better than the partial removal. Then came the debate, again came after a century. Tonsillectomy using guillotine eventually fell out of favor. So if you see in the history, partial tonsillectomy was done by finger, hook, forceps, wire, string guillotine, and tonsillotome. This is an instrument known as tonsillotome, which we are not using now, but we have seen in our archives. This is again an adenotome. St. Clair Thompson still is found in most of the tables and being used. Then complete tonsillectomy in 1909, George Ernest Waugh did removal of the entire tonsil using a method of careful dissection, followed by Fowler in 1930 in US. He introduced modern tonsillectomy, saying removing the tonsil, whole tonsil, and nothing but the tonsil. This is the usual tray which we see in all the OTs. Power instruments uses on this table. Cold steel tonsillectomy is patient is in supine position. All of us know, I will not go in detail. Under GA, neck extended, mouth gag, endotracheal intubation. Dissection by identification of the plane by tonsil holding forceps from upper pole, because that is less vascular. Lower pole dissection done by seizure or dissector or snare. Hemostasis usually by pressure packing, ligation with suture, or cautery, which can be unipolar or bipolar. This is a vague diagram. This is used to the lower pole and bipolar. Laser came, and it is not very popular. Here there is a coagulation during cutting, coagulation prior to cutting, then pinpoint coagulation and zone coagulation. Then came the dissection versus diathermy. There can be combination of blunt dissection, then hemostasis with diathermy. Diathermy I just explained. Lots of papers suggest diathermy increases post-op pain, whereas dissection causes more of intra-op bleed, especially in infant. But mind you, no difference in primary or secondary hemorrhage rates. Bipolar diathermy found to be better than ligation in many of the studies. So to conclude, the cold steel tonsillectomy, although considered outdated by some, it is the technique for tonsillectomy stood the test of time as an effective and safe method when compare pain and hemorrhage score. However, with this ligature or bipolar diathermy for hemostasis is well accepted, and results are same as that of the modern tonsillectomy with powered instrument like ablator. A word about cryosurgery, since we are talking about the history. The tonsil was frozen by application of cryoprobe and allowed to thaw. Two application, tonsillar tissue undergo necrosis and later fall off, leaving a granulation surface. Bleeding is less due to thrombosis of vessel. Usually temperature achieved was -82 degrees centigrade by CO2 and -196 degrees centigrade by liquid nitrogen oxide. Not used because of the tonsil regrowth, unpredictable and excessive scarring. This lasted for very short time in the history. This is the instrument which was used to be used in our country. There was advent of microdebrider, laser, harmonic, coblation. With these re-emerged again the concept of intracapsular or partial tonsillectomy. If we see the timeline, early 19th century, partial guillotine was done, then came the cryo, then the laser, microdebrider, and coblation. So, fundamental design of partial tonsillectomy preserve the tonsil capsule as a biological dressing, thus reducing postoperative pain, reducing recovery time, and reduction in post-op hemorrhage. Disadvantage, increased rate of tonsillar regrowth. Mainly it was because of the infective pathology, tonsillitis. Here is the powered microdebrider. The indications was tonsil hypertrophy causing obstructive sleep apnea breathing. This is the done. Now is again used for adenoid surgery. If we compare the result of the two, we can see there is more complications with this compared to the dissection method. Assisted serial tonsillectomy, that known as LAST, because often more than one sitting is required, each lasting about 20 minutes. Due to requirement for multiple sessions, this treatment is more expensive than a single session tonsillectomy. Patient compliance is required, making it unsuitable for young children and anxious person who risk harm if they move during procedure. So only for adult with enlarged cryptic tonsil under LA. CO2 laser, a handheld device, vaporizes, causes cryptolysis, or a KTP laser with 10-watt continuous beam is used. Achieved the functional result of reduction in tonsillar volume without the morbidity of pain and bleeding. At this moment, I will slightly move to other presentation. And the reason is there is a better one. I will come back. made so much of harm that people started asking, sir, you will do with laser or the powered instrument? That was a buzzword. Just a minute, I will change the stop sharing. I'm changing my screen. Just a minute. Yeah, I am coming back. No problem.
Different one.
I have come back.
Okay.
Yeah, there was. So I wanted to change, but I think I will continue with this. I am not. I don't want to kill the time. There was some changes which I will see. So the cold is this basically laser one did a lot of harm in the sense most of the patient even now they ask whether you will do it with laser without.
Can you make it full
anything.
screen, please?
But if you see the comparative reach, yeah, sure. I'm sorry. Yeah, if you see the results, yeah, in the dissection and tonsil laser had more symptoms on any scale of 10, more number of cases than the dissection tonsillectomy. Other like harmonic scalpel was introduced by Ethicon, an ultrasound dissector with coabulator, sharp blade, frequency 55. It breaks hydrogen bond of proteins, generate heat from tissue friction. Temperature is 50 to 100, whereas electrocautery may be up to 400. It is an expensive product. This is the setting. In ENT, it is not been used because of the higher collection rates. If you see the figures, intra-op bleed, post-op bleed, all are much more than the conventional method. Now, coming to cold ablation or the coblation tonsillectomy, which is now the buzzword. Cold ablation is the radio frequency bipolar current excited from sodium ion in the saline media, creates a plasma field, lyses the peritonsillar connective tissue. So it uses, this is the setup, and it uses RF energy to create plasma, and plasma energy ablates the tissue. Coblation is cold and controlled ablation. Ablation word is used for many things. Removal. Now this slide, I wanted to explain, this is a bit complicated, but I wanted to tell about the different modalities of the powered instrument. What is radio frequency ablation? Dysfunctional tissue is ablated from a high frequency alternating current. RF does not stimulate nerves or hurt muscle and used without GA, extensively used in cardiology for atrial fibrillation or arrhythmias. Ablation, on the other hand, is a controlled, non-heat driven process, uses RF energy to excite the electrolyte in a conductive medium such as saline solution, creating a precisely focused plasma. This is the main difference. Here the work is done by plasma, which is created by saline. Plasma's energized particle break molecular bond with tissue, causing tissue to dissolve at relatively low temperature of 40 to 70 degrees. The result is volumetric removal of target tissue with minimum damage to the surrounding tissue. Many coagulation devices are designed for hemostasis and seal the bleeding vessel. Now, what is microdebrider? It sucks, cuts, and irrigates, causes more bleeding in areas near periosteum or perichondrium. Of course, that is theoretical. Coagulation sucks, evaporate a smaller tissue and irrigates. It has coagulation and coagulation modes, so no bleeding. But microdebrider may be more useful in face and MLS like laryngeal polyp, papilloma, etc., where evaporation should be avoided. Harmonic scalpel now has no extra advantage in ENT, though used in some center for tonsillectomy. This is mainly used by general surgeon for say lap chole and other things. Now, how the conventional electrocautery works? The electric current arch formed between electrode and tissue, rapid tissue heating, tissue vaporizes to steam. Here, uses the energy directly on the tissue, high temperature cell membrane to explode the cell. Whereas coblation is a radio frequency with the bipolar band, conductive media it goes, plasma is created of highly ionized particle, energy disrupted at the molecular bond. It uses RF in coblation, molecular dissociation via plasma, conventional electrosurgical devices by arcing in the tissue, and laser casting in the tissue. Test 40 to 70, here both are more than 400. Thermal penetration is minimum in coblation. So that's why coblation is a buzzword for mainly the neurosurgeons. Dr. Janki doing a lot of pituitary with this very good instrument. Conventional electrosurgical is deep penetration. Laser, you can set moderate to deep. Effect on the target tissue is gentle removal, whereas in electrocautery, rapid heating, charring, and in laser, it is rapid heating and vaporization. Effect on surrounding tissue is minimal in coagulation, whereas in advent charring and burning and bleeding in laser and electrosurgery. So some papers, one such paper which published has controlled study, randomized 10 patients, one side it was operated by the same surgeon, same sitting, and one side operated by coblation, other by the bipolar dissection, and they found coblation is better in symptom score than in bipolar diather. So this is the pain score and the area of tonsillar fossa in cautery vis-a-vis cautery, not the conventional cold instrument, cautery tonsillectomy. Now, a study meta-analysis, if we see 29 studies with the total 256 participants. Here it was the latest in 2017. The conclusion, author's conclusion was, coblation may cause less pain on post-op day 1, but difference is small and may be clinically meaningless. By post-op day 3, the difference decreases further, and by post-op 7 days, there appears to be little difference. Similar rates of primary hemorrhage, but cannot rule out a small increased risk of secondary hemorrhage with coblation. Therefore, it is uncertain that coblation has any advantage over traditional tonsillectomy techniques. Other studies revealed a significant less intraoperative or postoperative complication. Coblation is associated with less early pain and quick return to normal diet on daily or the daily activity. If we compare the all modalities, especially with respect to post-op hemorrhage and return to theater for the hemorrhage, probably cold steel stands out much superior to all other methodology. In UK, still the cold steel tonsillectomy, cold steel dissection with unipolar, everything is done coblation. Around 30 to 40% surgeon still use the cold steel tonsillectomy. A word about adenoids, because this is something really not included. In this, I will, after the literature and my own experience, blind curators to be not practiced. Curettage under vision gives better result. Curettage under vision gives best result. Even if some part of adenoid is left, usually no regrowth of adenoids, no evidence to suggest volume of adenoids causes secretory otitis media. This is the review of the author. But if recurrent SOM suggests adjuvant adenoidectomy over the age of 3 years with grommet insertion, has more incidence of velopharyngeal stenosis. There is also some role of IgA deficiency in children with AOM. Many indications mainly indication in OSA, where trial of steroid spray and nasal decongestant alleviate symptom in children. If fails, then adenoid removal has to be done. and as young as 1 year, 6 month child has been operated for OSA. Curettage under vision, this is important. The technique of curettage under vision, coblation, microdebrider has really no difference in outcome. Conventional curettage under vision takes less time. This is when I was reading latest Scott Brown, the chapter adenoidectomy 26-27 clearly states, this is contrary to our feeling that powered instruments are good for adenoids. So to conclude, although considered rather outdated, I'm talking about the conventional instrument, the cold steel technique for tonsillectomy has stood the test of time as an effective and safe operation. However, bipolar cautery for hemostasis is well accepted. Long-term results are same as with the coblation. So, my dear friends, don't have to worry if you don't have the coblation. Please go on doing this. Then for adenoid through coblation, though coblation is a preferred method, it is under vision has the best result. This is what we had the thinking. But when I went through the literature and latest Scott Brown, that say the conventional methods are equally good. Now here are some of the diagrams. Mostly the patients who have come to me and followed up by others who has done. This is a big tonsil, you can see, everybody know. This is a stone. When first time I saw, I was very excited. I termed it as a tonsil only, thinking to be I am going to achieve something big. But when I consulted the thing, there are thousands of cases are reported. So this is a stone in the tonsil from the cryptomagma. This is again tonsillar crypts where you see substance and it comes out, cryptomagma opens, there is disease, and the usual treatment, if recurs, then go for tonsillectomy. Here, it is one of my cases, healthy slough after 5 days of dissection tonsillectomy, and I used bipolar cautery wherever required after packing if there is any bleeder, not cut with the bipolar. This one of the patient has a hemorrhage in the ward itself, and it was again managed conservatively with pack, hydroxide, and cold gargles. This is a trick. This next patient came after 9 days, had slough because he did do gargles, which I always advise, peroxide 1:4. There was slight bleeding from the slough, and this again managed with a small pack with hydrogen peroxide. This is my mistake. There is on the left side, you can see hole on the interior pillar. Probably I fiddled with a cautery and anesthetist when removing the tube. Common finding, which I have got, there is a swelling of uvula immediately after tonsillectomy, maybe because I did some cautery or there is a dissection near the upper pole. This is a smooth tonsillar fossa after 3 months on the left side and post-op after 6 months on the right side. You can see the beautifully, there is hardly any residual tissue, no lymphoid follicles, nothing. During bipolar cautery, if I can see some lymphoid follicle, I used to cauterize it. These cases were operated by coblation at other places. This was beautiful slough seen on the 3rd day. And on the 10th day, patient came with a bleed. I can see the slough on the top, and behind there was some bleeding, which again I managed conservatively with a cotton swab soaked in the hydrogen peroxide. So now coming to the changing indications of tonsillectomy. Over the years, indications of tonsil adenoid or combined adenotonsils have changed. Emphasis has been changed from infection to obstruction. These are the latest guideline by a guide, and here we can see, just a minute, American Academy of Otolaryngology guideline. They say 1, 2, 3 formula. it is for infection, 7 or more episode in the preceding year, or 5 or more episodes in each of the preceding 2 years, 3 or more episodes in each of the previous 3 years, temperature more than 101 degree Fahrenheit with sore throat and presence of one of the following like temperature, cervical adenopathy, tonsillar exudate, and positive culture of beta hemolytic streptococcus. Then hypertrophy causing severe airway obstruction or sleep apnea, severe dysphagia. These are the symptoms. Then peritonsillar abscess, unresponsive to medical treatment, again calls for tonsillectomy. Streptococcal carrier, though this is now going down because of the antibiotic, but these are the American guidelines and we had to follow. Now coming to adenoidectomy alone, recurrent acute otitis media or chronic serous otitis media, adenoidectomy should not be performed with insert the first set of myringotomy tube unless there is another indication for adenoidectomy besides chronic otitis media. However, repeat surgery for chronic otitis media should consist of adenoidectomy with myringotomy, with or without myringotomy tube placement. This is a very clear guidelines which all of us should follow. So over the years, if you see the number of cases, if I go, just a minute, this is coming on to me.
Dr. Munkaji, please have the mic close to you. You're not able to hear you.
Overall, am I audible now? Overall indications of tonsillectomy over the years, if we see age-wise, you see more of the chronic hypertrophy with OSA in all age groups, excepting 30 to 90, where it is hypertrophic tonsil with snoring and dental malocclusion. And infection cases are coming down with the age progressing. Am I clear?
Yes, yes.
Then children with obstruction, I don't know, this is coming to my way. Children consistently been operated more for obstruction as infection. This chart says according to the age group. The one on the right side is the obstruction and the left side is infection. Only in the age group of 11 to 13, there with 11 to 16, we find infection is little more common. Indication for adenoid now is coming to this thing, obstruction. Now, tonsillectomy, adenoidectomy, both. Since ages there used to be difference of opinion on tonsillectomy.
Keep the mic closer, please. Keep the mic closer.
Yeah. Tonsillectomy, adenoidectomy, or both. Since ages there used to be different opinion on tonsillectomy alone, adenoidectomy alone, or combined. We used to have lot of theories about Waldeyer's ring. It redistributes, fat redistributes, blah, blah, blah. Now, earlier, infection used to be the main indication. Now, obstruction has been recognized as a major factor, and actual site of obstruction can be identified, and so the decision making has become very easy whether to do only tonsil, adenoid, or both. Am I clear? Are you able to listen me completely, sir?
Yeah, clear,
Thank
clear.
you. Now, if we see the incidence, a combination of adenoid and tonsillectomy was usually due to obstruction, then each procedure alone. If we see the combination, on the left-hand side is the infection and the right-hand side, the green is the obstruction. So we see the obstruction is going up. Tonsillectomy is still mainly for the infection, where adenoidectomy mainly for obstruction or the blockage of the breath. So to summarize, tonsillectomy with or without adenoid or adenoid alone still remains one of the common surgery. Cold steel is preferred for tonsillectomy and it gives same long-term result and is cost effective as well. However, for adenoids, coblation is the preferred method as it is done under vision, giving best results compared to the blind method of conventional under vision. Coblation microdebrider has really no difference in outcome. Conventional curettage under vision takes less time. This is from the latest Scott Brown. So my dear friends, never ever hesitate and think that I cannot operate because I don't have the microscope, I don't have the cobbletter. If once done properly, everything can be done. Thank you very much for patience hearing.
Very nicely explained, very lucid presentation, and
Thank you, sir.
actually gives a very heartwarming, message to the. Can you actually stop the screen share and come so that we will discuss with
Yeah.
the audience?
I knew this was a common topic, so there will be a lot of questions and a lot of this thing. And that is what I wanted. I wanted somebody as experienced in diverse field like you, because you are dealing with a lot of cobbleters and debridement and power instrument, which I don't have much experience. And or anybody from audience is welcome. I always see it is a participative, interactive thing. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, just to summarize your talk and also put. Actually, in our center, what we do is we actually still do only the conventional cold steel dissection method in tonsillectomy. Let me be very honest. And in case the patient is very insisting on doing a coblation, then I will do it. But if it is for myself, if I did my tonsillectomy for myself and I did it with a cold steel instrument. I did not allow anybody to do it with a coblation. So I'm very clear about what I have to do because I know what is the long-term pain results. I know the score. I know the score of the secondary hemorrhage. So I'm telling you as a personal patient, I'm telling you that I underwent tonsillectomy only by the dissection method. With respect to the adenoid, believe me, before we were doing a blind curettage, but now in our center, we put in an endoscope, put it like the septum position, and then we do curettage under vision. So that's exactly what we do. In case my fellows want to get trained by the debrider, yes, I can use a debrider. But I think there's also a lot of studies supporting it. Debrider, there's a 2-minute, advantage over the conventional curettage technique. The bleeding has been proved to be same. And I'm sure that many people will definitely participate in this. But my opinion is old is gold. And by the fancy tools, I'm not at all shaken. I don't think that just because you have a coblation, believe me, I have seen doctors who have told that coblation I will charge 1.5 lakhs. I'm sorry to tell you, but they will put all the charge higher for just the coblation. And for the debrider, the blade will imagine one blade with cobbletor, and then you're going to charge that patient so high with no extra advantage. So this is my opinion. As a moderator, I want to tell you that I think this is also supported by literature. I've asked several people across the world, and if you leave behind a little, as you rightly pointed out, a little bit of that tissue, adenoid tissue here and there, what happens? And they clearly say that if you leave behind 40% of the volume of the adenoid only, then there is going to be a problem. There are some articles. There's one article by, I think, Dr. Vanika Anand, but the volume size is very low, 40. I've read almost all the papers regarding it. I'm very clear about the steel instruments still hold good as you have very rightly put the lecture. Now we will open it for the audience. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Munkaji. Do you have anybody can raise their hand and ask their question to Dr. Munka? Anybody has got a question? Mr. Harpreet, you can actually, you can put your hand up. You can raise your hand and I will unmute you. So do you have any questions? We will have a lot of them, I'm sure, but I'm not able to see the hand. Or you can type in the chat box. Let me ask from the chat box, what do you do for your secondary hemorrhage? So first question is, do you do tonsils under local anesthesia? This is a question which has been asked.
I have seen earlier some people doing, but I never favor it. Can you get my voice, please?
Yes.
Yeah, I never allow it because it become unhuman like. Patient sitting and then over a surgeon is sitting in front of him, you are given a ball, but still some people do it for thanks to them if they are happy. Again, it is said if one is happy with a particular technology, let him go for it. Practically, I will never like to go do under local anesthesia because it is neither convenient for the patient nor for me. And with the intubation and pack, I am so happy. There is no chances of any what you call secretion going into the windpipe, and it's a win-win situation for everybody.
Let me put the answer also in a different way. Imagine that you are the patient and you are asked mouth and somebody is going to prick inside your mouth and seeing the procedure. This is actually devastating.
Exactly.
I will never even think about it. And I think it should be the same for any patient. Okay, let's go on to Dr. Minish Jivekar, who has got a question. Can you unmute Mr. Harpit? Minish Jivekar is here, and I think he wants to raise his hand, but he can't find the option. Dr. Minish, can you unmute and talk? Hello, Dr. Minish.
Yeah, done.
Yeah, carry on, Dr. Minish.
Yes. Dr.
Yeah,
Mukta is a great lecture. I especially came to hear this lecture because we are talking about such high
thank you.
in the past 3 weeks. And sometimes it's very good to know something that is a very important take-home message that, don't just because you have invested in it and you have it. You can still use the old instruments to a very good result. Now, I want to ask you two questions, which always are often in my mind. So you mentioned that, a lot of patients of tonsillectomy which are coming now or are also coming for obstructive symptoms rather than mainly the infective symptoms also over the period of time. So, so I wanted to ask, of tonsillitis decreased because of the usage of antibiotics, or is it because of more ENT surgeons present, or is it because more patients are going towards homeopathic and Ayurvedic and they're having that phobia of getting operated for a tonsillar surgery? So that is one part of the question. And the second part is also for you and like Dr. Janki, how do you feel the number of tonsillectomies in the next 10 years to come? Because when I was a resident in Sion Hospital, we used to do like 20 tonsils, 15 tonsils in a week. Now we hardly do maybe 15, 20 in 6 months. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, you want to answer, Dr. Prakashji? Carry on.
Yeah, basically you are right. The incidence has come down because of the advent of good antibiotic. Now people are more cautious. We now hardly get to see a peritonsillar abscess, maybe just 2 or 3 in a year, which used to be a good number, almost couple of them in a month. So because of the antibiotic taken for any reason, it has some work. So that incidence is definitely gone down, not only in India. The NHS figure also I have shown in the first slide that says the number is going down. Yes, OSA, because now OSA people, the awareness has come and they feel the blockage, so they are more and more reporting for that. And it is definitely the number is going to go down. That is my feeling. It's like any infective pathology. If you see, if better antibiotic, better lifestyle, probably how many what you call brain abscess after CSM now you see, which we used to see say decades back. So it is akin to that.
Yeah, very
if you want to
very much agree with that. And also, I just add one more point to that. That I think nowadays, I think the pediatricians, all the general physicians, all of them are treating tonsillitis. So if the patient comes, referral to the ENT, which maybe would have been more, I think would have actually got treated at the primary physician level. And that is one reason also. And also the absolute use of antibiotics has definitely decreased the...
Can I just put in a point here, Dr. Janki, if you permit?
Yeah.
I have this question, like, pediatricians, many of them are against a tonsillectomy still in many parts, and my wife is a pediatrician and sometimes, we discuss this and it's a horrible discussion which ends up in a fight.
I think I got your question, Minish.
Do you see it in all parts of the country? Most pediatricians say tonsillectomy, it will go away.
No, Minish, I replied to your part. They say lymphoid follicles are a protective thing. I just tell him, if your guard has become rogue, it is better to remove him than carry him forward. So it is has become rogue, your things have gone bad, so it is better to remove. No point skipping it. It is not performing the duty.
Correct,
So
correct,
this is the
correct,
answer.
correct.
Yeah.
Actually, sir, to answer that in a more scientific way, I think you can tell that there are many scientific papers on what is the role for tonsil, the immune mechanism where the B and the T lymphocytes are formed. And there has been studies pre-tonsillectomy and post-tonsillectomy. And the curve is like this. You have a normal immune response, which dips in the immediate post-op, and then it recovers after 6 weeks. So this is because of the mucosal lymphoid tissue. That's a whole mechanism called the Walde's ring, which is still intact apart from the tonsil. And so there have been several studies pre and post tonsillectomy which clearly indicate that the initial dip goes off and your immune response is restored. So I think the argument can be actually put your, I'm sure that your better half will win ultimately because she's the boss. But scientifically speaking, tonsillectomy has a role. Believe me, because I'm a patient, I'm telling, I underwent the tonsillectomy, and before tonsillectomy, I know how I suffered, and after tonsillectomy, I know how good I am. So I'm telling it out of personal experience. I'm very sure about it. And I think you had a second question. What's your second question?
Yeah, the second question is that now in future, as we go in the next 10-15 years, would you see the OSA being a major indication of tonsillectomy rather than the infective component? That the patients are going to come more for the obstructive symptoms rather than the infective symptoms. Because sleep in children is a very big thing now in NHS and in the West. Deprivation of sleep in children is taking a very big role.
You want to answer that, Dr. Prakashji?
I think partly yes, partly no. Yes,
Yeah.
because at present, if that is obstructing, there is no way then to go for surgery. But wait for a while. Probably our engineers, technologists, they will come up with some drugs and which will take care. Like, you know, so ulcer surgery. When I was working in general surgery, vagotomy, pyloroplasty used to be in each OT. Now we hardly got to see it. Nobody goes for ulcer surgery. Similarly, as the problem increases, there are remedies for it. But yes, Minis, at present, surgery is more for obstruction, as I have shown in the diagram. That was again taken from a multiple center studies, and that shows the obstruction is the main cause. Infection anyway will be taken care of by pediatrician and the antibiotic.
Correct.
Yeah, I just want to add one point to that is that many people jump on operating on adenoids. This is something which even whether it is for obstruction or infective, whatever, I think there are clear-cut guidelines now that you have to start the patient on steroid sprays. And they have been proven to work for adenoid clearly. And I usually put the patients on a 3 to 6 months course of steroid sprays and nasal douche or a saline douche, and it works wonders. Believe me, it works wonders, and this avoids unnecessary adenoidectomy. This is a very important thing which I want to convey to the juniors. Don't jump on operating onto the adenoid just because the patient presents to you with obstruction. This is something which I want to convey.
Dr. Janki, somebody in the chat box has written Vinayak S. I persuaded my wife or my daughter's probably he meant to say the adenoids. Now she has improved with the steroid spray for steroid for adenoids really helps.
That's right.
That is the point what we are saying.
We give fluticasone. Fluticasone for which steroid we give fluticasone furoate or maybe fluticasone propionate or even momentosone. Momentosone is better tolerated for children, and that's a wonder drug for, I feel it's a one. So many adenoids, they come saying that I have been advised surgery, and when I put them on steroid for 6 months, it completely vanishes, and with a little saline douche.
In children, even the IgA level is sometimes important. If Vikram Khanna is around, if he can say something about it, ask them to find out.
Dr. Vikram is here, I don't know.
Okay, no problem.
So there are some people who are raising their hands. Can I? Mr. Redmi is there. Redmi, he is raising his hand. I'm not sure.
Unmuted. I have unmuted.
Yeah, please.
Doctor, your name is not unidentifiable, but we have unmuted you. You can ask
Yeah.
your question. Yeah. Redmi.
Redmi. The name is Redmi.
That is the name of the phone.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Maybe another.
no, he has muted himself. Okay, fine. So we have
Vikram Khanna, sir. Vikram Khanna, sir. Vikram Khanna.
Yeah, please bring him
Okay.
inside. Dr. Vikram
Unmuted
Khanna.
him. Hi, Dr. Vikram
Yeah,
Khanna, sir.
hi, good evening, everybody. Dr. Munka, excellent presentation. Some names and diagrams I am seeing for the first time. So thank you very
Oh,
much.
thank you. Thank you.
My-
Where are you? I don't see you. I don't see you. Your video is not on.
Yeah, video is off. Yeah,
Ah,
sir.
yeah.
Okay, no.
Put on your
Yeah,
camera.
that's why. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead, please.
I have
Yeah.
two questions.
Yeah.
One, you have, as Dr. Janki mentioned in the introduction, you have retired now and are into private practice.
Mhm.
But you must have done right from cold steel, then to bipolar, cautery, then microdermabrasion and coblation when you were in the institute. So I would like to know, now that you are in private practice, what methodology are you using for doing tonsillectomy and adenoidectomy? Number one. Number two, whether in a child or a young adult or an adenoidectomy, would you rule out allergy in such cases?
I think that's why I invited you about the allergy IgA level question I have raised in one of my slide. That is also important. Surgery comes after, there are definite indications before going for surgery, and which we have explained in the guideline in 2011 that clearly says, and that probably explains most of the thing. You asked about the methodology. In my hospital before my retirement also, since I was the only specialist, I didn't had a cobbleter in my thing because I knew I am going to retire and nobody was there to take over. But rest others I have used, even harmonic scalpel and other things. Still, I think cold steel is the best, done meticulously with clear plane of dissection, with due the results are excellent. As far as adenoid is concerned, 90% cases adenoid I never has to operate with the steroid inhaler and decongestant, and as the child grows age it was off. Probably I didn't have got an opportunity to operate an adenoid for isolated OSA or nasal blockage. Whatever was, it responded well to the conservative treatment. Two of my patients recently had IgA level and that was treated by the allergologist and they are doing good. So this is, I think, my answer to both your questions.
I just want to add one thing is that IgE, it's only so they have only IgG, IgA and IgM. So there is no IgE expression for the adenoids.
Hello?
I think we have Dr. Monish Grover. Monish Grover, can you unmute Monish Grover, please?
Hello?
Yeah, you're unmuted, Dr. Monish. Can you talk?
Hi, sir. Great talk,
Yeah.
sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Monish.
Wonderful talk, sir. Loved the historical part to it. I mean, I don't remember ever, hearing so much of history to it. What I really wanted to ask is, when we talk about, we give steroids for adenoids. One is mometasone or fluticasone furoate. But does that really change with the age of the child or the extent of adenoid hypertrophy? And if you really do use it, is it for a fixed duration? That is, yes, I'll wait for this much of time and then plan a surgery.
I think I will say two things. Like I always used it with the nasal decongestant. So probably it makes some space to breathe in. And second part, as the child grows up, probably the whole structure grows and adenoid remains the same. So that makes a natural opening of that. So that may be one explanation. So.
Can I also chip in this answer? I think it's directed towards you. I'm not sure. Dr. Monish?
Both.
Okay, so
for that matter, any
I think I usually is actually, first of all, see what the patient has come in for, whether it's because of obstruction, because of, there is rhinosinusitis along with the adenoids. There are so many other things you have to look into. Just put in an endoscope, evaluate the status of the sinuses and things like that. If I find that the patient has got definitely an infective cause with the sinuses, you have some stagnation of reading secretions, and then this is a definitive indication I will not operate for the adenoids. This is point blank. I don't operate. I put the patient on 6 months, 3 to 6 months course of steroids, and that is clearly mometasone, and that has been proven not to produce any HPA axis suppression even in children. So this is a very point blank answer I give to the patient. I do not operate. If the patient presents with severe obstructive sleep disorder, like sleep-related obstructive disorder, then probably I don't find any infective. If I put my endoscope, just see the nose, there's nothing in. No infection, just an obstruction, then probably I might again put the patient on a course of steroids, but maybe for a lesser period of time, then may go in for surgery. But there are people who say that I operated on a patient for 1 year old or even 1.5 years old for the adenoid. To me, I think my least age was 2.5. Never be below 2.5. I never operated below 2.5. I don't know what your experience is regarding the lowest age. I'm a little conservative with regards to adenoid, less than 2 years. But I've heard people operating for 1 year and less. I don't know. I don't know whether that's really correct. I don't know. So I can have your opinion also on this.
Basically, I think the problem is not with the surgery, but mainly with the anesthesia and fluid and electrolytes. So people want to avoid the pediatric age group.
No, but there are people who say that I've operated for a 1 year old baby for. We have listened to some talks. Let Dr. Munish give his opinion.
As you said, it's a similar experience here. I have not operated on a child younger than maybe 2.5 or 3 years of age. So we don't operate them as early. My only contention here is, right, if a child with a grade 4 hypertrophy or even a grade 3 comes to me at 3 years versus, a similar type of hypertrophy in a 6-year-old, will the duration of steroid really vary? Because I know a 3-year-old child will still continue to have an increase in the size of adenoids. So I in my heart really know that it's would create. Versus a 6-year-old child probably will not have a further increase. So maybe my threshold for surgery would be lesser in a 3-year-old child, right? Because I will presume that his adenoids will probably keep on increasing. So that's what it is.
Yeah, but I agree with you. But then would you tell me that even if you find evidence of rhinosinusitis and also some mucoid secretions and quinal banking effect, you might not consider saline douching with steroids?
When I make that comment, it's absolutely, when you're saying that it's right. So it's only for a pure adenoid hypertrophy causing an OSA.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
yeah. Then yeah, I fully agree that the threshold becomes lesser if it's just because of the causing the OSA. But if there is a little infective component added, then I think we can try with the douching and the steroids.
And anything on the post-operative nasal sprays then? I mean, we do use them for some time.
Dr. Munkaji, you want to answer?
No idea. And I have never used any steroid because nasal allergy is usually not associated. Once you clear the passage, it takes care of it.
I use steroids. I'm sorry. I mean, even though I'm a moderator, I'm sorry to tell you that I use steroids post-operatively, both for, because the one thing is the pain threshold, it reduces the pain threshold, and they are more comfortable during their immediate post-op recovery. And I have seen that consistently by using sprays, as well as sometimes for tonsils, if they complain of too much pain, there are some patients who are a little fussy about the pain. The pain threshold is not the same for everybody. Then I prefer to give some shots of corticosteroids.
Okay. Mohsin, one question. Monish, one question. Since you are dealing with morely pediatric age group patient, what is your take? Say patient for CI you have put up and he has this obstructive feature. So you give steroid first, or you think of going for surgery first and then go for CI? Or any relation?
I think that's a very important decision-making point, because we do not want really to operate in a child who has a very edematous middle ear mucosa
Right.
or has a chance of a retraction developing later on,
Mhm.
because in that case the whole implant gets jeopardized.
Yeah.
So we have to evaluate the child very precisely for any kind of adenoid hypertrophy. Luckily, when you're operating on a child who's 1 or 2 years of age, majority of time the adenoids are not that bad, so we get away with that. But if we have a patient, and that's really happened with us when you talk about it, so we take care of that first. Or if there is a mild to moderate hypertrophy, the patient is put on nasal steroids for a pretty long time. Yeah, so and even the evaluation differs, because once you have a glue ear kind of a picture, then the
Yes.
audiological evaluation has to be very proper, because the hearing loss may be because of that rather than any sensory neural component. So you need to do a lot of testing on these fine kids.
And what is the lowest age you put the steroid on the child? Lowest
Nasal sprays are
age.
2 years. 2 years. So mometazone has been approved by FDA till 3 years and fluticasone furoate till 2 years. So that's what it is.
Not
So
less
I'm pretty
than
happy
that.
to using them. So even some studies say mometazone is as safe as fluticasone furoate. So my youngest age is 2
Mometazone
years
is
of age.
safer than fluticasone. According to studies, the mometazone is safer than, I mean, not to, I should not talk in front of Alembic, but then this is science, so we have to talk science. And mometazone is definitely, there are a lot of studies which clearly say that mometazone, the HV axis suppression is less than 0.03. So this is according to the studies.
What's the bioavailability of fluticasone furoate? So mometazone is 0.03. What I knew about fluticasone furoate was 0.01. FDA, I think, recently approved it for 2 years of age. That's something probably we can go ahead and check.
Yeah, I will check. But I think there was also a paper by Professor Ponico from the Mayo Clinic, and he did a study on 6 different steroids. That is, one was the mometazone, second is the fluticasone furoate, fluticasone propionate, and then budesonide, and then beclomethasone. We had 5, and out of this, the least was mometazone. I can give you the paper.
Yeah, I would love to read that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Dr. Jayaprakash Reddy.
Yeah, Dr. Jayaprakash Reddy. Yeah. Where is Dr. Jayaprakash? Can you bring him inside?
No, he's not traceable now.
Oh, he's not there?
No.
We have Dr. Tushar Kranti Ghosh.
Dr. Ghosh.
Dr. Aila Sami is here.
Tushar, sir.
You have to fish them out because I'm not able to see.
Yes. Tushar, sir.
Yes.
Hi, sir.
I'm audible? I'm audible?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a great discussion. But I am very fond of Cobblestone user, okay? Janki was a great surgeon, no doubt about it. You have come my hospital also. Okay, but if you use how the Cobblestone, your all inhibition will be reduced. 1.5 years also, if you do, you are capable to do the 2 years of age adenoid. Why not 1.5 years? If suffering so much, then why not? Number one. Number two, Dr. Mumtaz says that within of 6 years, 7 years, it will reduce. But my paper was there just 2 days before I published.
Dr. Ghosh, can you be a little slow? Because
yes.
Yeah.
Just few days before, one paper was there. Nasal stuffiness in children is really useful in endoscopy. It's very much endoscopy. I like your point. I do regular endoscopy. I have shown 55 years of age, a huge adenoid, but we thought previously this is the lymphoma. See, it is the adenoid. 34 years of age, 16 years of age, any age, huge adenoid was there, but it was treated previously allergy. So it is reduced the adenoid with steroid. This is the wrong concept. Adenoid, if adenoid
no, please go slow. We will have to hear you line by line. I'm not able to. You're very fast. So your statement is adenoid doesn't regress with steroid. Is that your point?
Yes. Because if you see the 15 years of age, 62 years of age, sometimes if you do endoscopy, then you will see the huge adenoid. A lot of time they are treated by allergy problem with steroid spray. Few years. But if you say huge adenoid is there, so it is the wrong, I think, the adenoid reduced with the time. Yes, number one.
Yeah, first we will take this question first, and then we'll go to the next question. So, Dr. Munkaji, you want to answer this, or shall I answer? Where is Dr. Munka? I can't see him actually. Dr. Munkaji, Mr. Harpit, is he there, or I will answer this question? Okay. Now, yeah.
Can you listen to me? Yeah.
He's there. Yeah. Would you like to answer that question, Dr.
Yeah, I will, and then you can add on if there is something more. Like Tushar, what you said about 59, 39, 61, they are the cases there can be. But as a rule, in majority, get regressed after the age of 6 to 7 years. So that is there. So where it is persisting, okay, you have to tackle with it. It cannot be a rule for everybody. That is my point. Secondly, you said about coblation. I am not against any technology. Idea of presentation was person don't have a coblation and microscope. Please don't feel aback that eye surgery, and you can give equal result or results with the same cold instruments. That was the assumption. Now, Dr. Janki, you take.
No. Let me put my hands down and say that coblation. The way coblation is being promoted in the market, honestly speaking, I think it is. It should not be done that way. I think there are. We've been doing coblation for ages now. Also, I think coblation is being over publicized. So let the juniors get a very clear point, and there are evidence-based studies. This is not my contention. Please go through numerous papers, go through the latest Scott Brown, go through so many research papers saying what is the pain score for hemorrhage, and you will find that cold steel tops the list. It tops the list. About whatever you take, this will top the list. So there is nothing to deprecate if you are able to do with a cold steel in a very fine fashion. Then I think I would, to my tonsil, do it only by a cold steel. I don't have any, bias against any particular instrument. But to actually say that no, I will do it only by the coblation, I think it's not the right message to convey for the juniors, because there is evidence. This is evidence based. And if you go through the latest Scott Brown, please go through the latest Scott Brown, which is the Bible for ENT. Just see the role of steroid sprays in the treatment of adenoids. And they have clearly given a beautiful paragraph. There are so many studies, and you can go through literature. We are talking evidence-based medicine, and we're not talking just our experience. So evidence says that steroids do help in regression of the adenoids. So that is clear, and we go by evidence-based medicine.
Dr. Janki, why I brought this topic today, in the Nagpur conference, immediately after one presentation on pass out, who told me, sir, I want to buy instrument for tonsil adenoid. He said, now, sir, I cannot take. I said, why? Because they say if you are not doing with the this thing, you cannot do the adenoid. Adenoid should always be done. So that misconception I want to take off.
Sir, I will do one thing, webinar. I will do a webinar on cold steel tonsillectomy, and I can do several. I have so many videos. Section method. I will show you the coblation. I will show you the healing on first week, second week, third week, and also 1 month. Now let them decide. Okay, let us have a real and versus dissection. I'm not trying to convey a point. My point is this: don't try to push technology, because sometimes you might have a company bias also inside. Because I knew that, I'm sorry to tell this, I knew that when coblation started in India, let me tell you this, Dr. Ghosh, I'm a very close friend of you, nothing to, nothing personal. I have heard the organizers saying that we will sponsor the surgeon, we will sponsor, but there should be one case of coblation, birth of coblation tonsillectomy in India. Believe me, I know. I have been seeing the transition right from cold steel. I'm sure Dr. Munkaji will also agree. I can also bring that surgeon on here on the panel. I will just tell him, boss, you told me, is it right or wrong? There are several conferences where coblation has been forced, and actually people have been made to do it with the coblation, and the surgeon was brought from various parts of in a world or India or whatever, and then made to do it. This is how coblation was really introduced, believe me. But if you go through literature, if you go through evidence base, there is no evidence base. There is no evidence base which clearly says the pain score or the hemorrhage score is better to a conventional dissection technique. And that's what Dr. Munka's talk was all about.
No, I said 2 cases. I have shown you after coblation. What they say, with the cold steel, more chances of bleeding. No, gentlemen, it is not like this. It is how nicely you do that is important. There can be a complication after coblation also. I have seen people using cobbleter without putting saline, you know, so they don't create a plasma. They are using cobbleter as a RF, you can say, not as a cobbleter. So Tushar, you might have seen some people doing it, charring the whole surface.
But I now I have done a lot of tonsil adenoid. Now I'm so much happy, basically. But when you start
on the first set, I said, if you are happy with the technology, your patients are happy, you can go away with it. But for the juniors or for the person, that should not be inhibition. That should not be inhibition.
In case of child,
sir, no, just 1 minute. I just want to tell you, because since I'm also involved, I'm just telling you that there is something called I am happy versus there is something called evidence base. So we can be happy. We can definitely be happy. There's no doubt about it. If you're happy, you can. There's something called evidence. And that is research, and that is there on all the standard books or papers. And we as teachers should convey that to the juniors rather than saying, even I can say, I'm sorry, Dr. Ghosh, I also do a lot of coblation tonsil. But that's not the point. The point is whether I'm not happy or I'm happy is not the point. But point is that what does evidence say? What does evidence say? Evidence says that visualizing the adenoid with an endoscope and doing a curettage or doing it with a debrider is as good, if not better, to the coblation technique. So this is a very clear evidence-based medicine. So
to this, Dr. Janki, I will add just one more point. Evidence-based is very important, and we must look at the cost factor also. If you are happy because you are charging more and patient has to pay from his nose, that is not the correct way.
Can we have Dr. Minish? He wants to make a point, and then we'll come back to Dr. Ghosh again, because we'll have a good discussion with him. Dr. Minish Juvekar, you're there?
Sir, I'm
Dr. Minish. Please carry on.
I will just sum up a few points. I was just noting down. Firstly, congratulations, Dr. Janki. You nailed the point. Very importantly. Now, I want to make just 2-3 points. We were talking about adenoidectomy in children. Now, I had just been to a meeting of pediatricians who do sleep, and they were discussing about when to do an adenoid. Now, just to highlight a point, what they think about a child, this is what I realized. So they talk about lack of development, lack of mental development, more irritability, inability to study in school, and the growth factor. They felt that the child grows maximum mentally and physically in sleep. So more apneic episodes in sleep will cause more disturbance in his growth. So they too are also of the opinion that any surgical years of age, that was the general consensus. Now, coming back to the coblation part, presently I'm doing a study which is not really published, but it's under process. So I can just share with you. We are doing a tonsillectomy, one side cold steel and one side coblation. I'm telling the patients that we are doing it for you, but I'm not telling them which side I'm doing what. And the patients are coming for a follow-up, like a blind study. Believe you me, out of the 15 patients we have done, 14 of them have complained of more pain on the side of coblation. 14 of them. Now, I might not be a brilliant coblation surgeon like Dr. Tushar, he's a good friend of mine, but I just feel that, 14 of them complaining of more pain on one side is something which I and my staff realize you cannot ignore. There is something definitely there, and the pain definitely is much more than the conventional method. So just a point, I don't know, but you nailed it that you just cannot use a technology because it's being advocated. You have to think that something like a tonsillectomy done for 50 years, just one technology can't change the whole outcome. We all grew up in tonsils with 50 years where people did it. Anyway, thank you so much.
Wonderful point, Dr. Manish. Honestly speaking, if a technology has come and if we don't utilize it, I think I am the last person to do that. We have to utilize the technology, but we should also see whether that technology is going to give me that amount of leverage for the cost effectiveness and what is the distinct advantages it gives over the previous technique. And if I find that this technology is going to definitely supersede the previous technology, I'm the first person definitely to recommend it. But honestly speaking, as you say, I have not been so impressed. Maybe during the surgery, it looks a little bedless, but with respect to post-operative pain, with respect to the post-operative, hemorrhage, I am definitely telling you, cold steel with tying the knots should be taught to every postgraduate rather than to actually, 6 webinars have happened during this particular COVID times about coblation for tonsil. And I honestly believe that I think we should convey a different message to the postgraduates. Yeah, anybody has got a question?
Thank you so much. Basically, this is a time ticket. When you will use for a long time and you will be expert, then there is something change. Basically, initially using habituated to do the conventional for the last 50 years. Suddenly, coblation came. So there is definitely initially problem will be there, definitely. But when you are a more frequent user, then it will be comfort feel and then completion will be less. Definitely, no doubt about it. Conventional is the no doubt about it.
Yeah, very, very nicely put, Dr. Ghosh. Let us see if somebody else has got some questions. So again, I always say a fool behind a tool is always the method of the coblation or whatever. It is the surgeon who really matters a lot. It's not the tool. It's actually how we use the tool. But if you do a dissection, proper dissection, wonderful technique. I really love the dissection technique. Okay, let's take some more questions. Do we have any questions here? Dr. Ahila Sami was here. I don't know. Dr. Ahila, I'm unmuting you, Dr. Ahila. Carry on. Dr. Ahila Sami. Dr. Ahila Sami, I have unmuted you. I have unmuted you. You don't do anything, man. Okay, start. Yes, Dr. Ahila.
Hello, friends. Am I audible? My voice is okay?
Very audible, very much audible.
Excellent presentation from Prakash ji. I think this is one of the best talks in the lockdown period I had watched. That too, this is a gem of a talk for students and PGs. Yeah, I also watch a few coblation talks and everything, but this is the best talk. Personally, I want to tell a couple of messages. I operate in corporate hospital. 90% of my surgeries are coblation, but for the past 25 years, I am doing tonsillectomy. My previous years tonsillectomy, if I see with conventional method, their anterior pillar, posterior pillar are still like any, even if I watch all those previous patients. But this coblation after 6 months, it will be one plane from the buccal mucosa to the posterior pharyngeal wall. But still, I'm honest, I'm speaking 90% I am doing under coblation, because in corporate, if I do under 45,000 coblation, I get 1K and I get the double pay. I'm honestly telling. But for youngsters, I tell the coablation method, conventional method is the best method is the best. And if I want to do a conventional method, not the coablation method. And for young age, I have done, I usually don't do below 2.5 years, but only once for a sleep disorder, I had done a adenoidectomy for 1 year and 2 months. Did very well after surgery and slept very well. So again, I wanted to stress. And one more thing regarding the pain, I had been watching several talks about coablation. They say if you don't touch the muscle, there will not be any pain. I don't touch the muscle. I had done hundreds and hundreds of the thing. But after the coablation, day 1, day 2, the child will be absolutely painless. From the 3rd day or 4th day, they will come and sit in front of our clinic, catching the pain. But conventional method, day 1, day 2, they have pain. From the onwards, they will not have the pain. Overall, if you calculate, coablation is like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aguilar. Very well put. It's a very nice way of putting it too. And I think we will have, please understand, this panel is not to deprecate an instrument. Please understand, this is not to deprecate an instrument, not to say that don't do it. If you're, earning a lot of money, like Dr. Aguilar says, keep doing it. But the idea is to convey evidence-based medicine. That is the idea.
That is correct. Yes, that
is the idea. As teachers, I think we to teach the students only evidence-based medicine and not how to earn money and how to, so Aguilar was very frank and honest. So that's a very nice thing coming from the heart. But it cannot be applied when you actually tell a junior, as he says, for a junior, or if he does it on himself. I did it on myself with a cold steel. So I had coblation option, I had laser, and nowadays people write laser tonsillectomy. I don't know, it's a fancy word. Laser tonsillectomy, laser adenoidectomy, laser meningoplasty. Laser septoplasty. Believe me, this is all seen by everybody. I really don't know why people write that, and I don't know why, Dr. Prakash Mukha is back, so I just engage the audience. I'll unmute Dr. Prakash ji, you can carry on.
While I presentation, I said that laser has caused more problems. Still today, people ask, will you do it with laser? Even for septoplasty, they ask. They have given a feeling that laser is something very superior because that used to cost lakhs of rupees. So even for a septoplasty, people do ask, even today also, sir, will you like to do it with laser? I said, what is laser? You understand.
Sir, please understand, Dr. Mukherjee, that is the amount of marketing which the laser companies have done. Simply the kind of impact which a company has created through us, and because the same thing is being done by the next technology will come. Believe me, this is going to happen. The next, after the coblation is going to come, they will say, no, the coblation is bad, let us do it. Why? Because it's you might have a better technology, but ultimately when you see evidence-based, that holds good. It is not the the laser. Laser now has vanished, and in fact the laser is producing more harm. It is producing velopharyngeal stenosis according to clear-cut papers to do with the laser. Well, I got once the laser came, there was a big bash about laser. Yeah. My friend got the laser. Immediately the patient came and said, "Do you have laser? If you don't have laser, I'll go away." The same thing now is happening with the coblation. Can you do it with the coblation? If not, I'll go away. So this is the wrong practice. This is what I feel. I think we should change, and
so
we are not biased by any company.
Audience will believe that I did a right topic at right time to make the things clear about this. That was the very purpose of doing that. I think if anybody disagree, can please raise your hand and come up. If anybody disagree.
Yeah. So let us see if anybody is raising their hand. I can see only Dr. Tushar Kranti Ghosh's hand is still up. Maybe he wants to tell something. I don't know. But I think today, Dr. Tushar, you want to talk? I'm unmuting you because your hand is up. Oh, I have one person, gentleman. Yeah. Galaxy Grand Prime Plus. Please talk, please. I
Hands up
can't
only.
get your name. I got the Galaxy Prime Plus. I unmuted, my dear friend. You can talk. Galaxy Prime Plus, please. You're unmuted now. GG. I can't see the person.
Probably he's not aware, sir.
Vinayak. Okay, Vinayak. I'm going to unmute Vinayak. Yeah, unmuted.
Yes, sir.
Vinayak.
Janaki is a very lovely this one moderation. And the thing is, like this paper, I am doing a case series as I just mentioned. It's a 50 case series regarding are we justified in doing adenoidectomy when we are doing when you are planning for a TAR. As sir said, steroids they really work well. And when you say evidence-based medicine, right? I show those X-rays to the patients after doing that is just with steroid treatment, and the size you see regressing. The patients are very happy. The relatives are also happy. The parents are very happy. It's giving me results, sir.
Sir, honestly speaking, you will not believe the number of cases coming to our clinic saying that, sir, you operate. I've already been advised surgery. I said, just wait, take these steroids.
That's
and
what.
Believe me, they are so happy that they have a big thing that you saved my
Actually, sir, what I would like to add, any surgery we advocate, I always believe, change your shoes. You think that if you are from the, say, 5 years down the line, you come to know your surgery was done, which was not required, person. So let us be justified. We must convince the patient, give the pros and cons, what you call it as a cost benefit analysis, and that should be an audit for ourselves. If I am going to operate, I am going to expect this result. So that is what I have to add.
So we have Dr. Realme. Realme, where are you? Can you, Mr. Harpreet, can you actually unmute Realme? Realme XT. Is that a phone or I don't know what it is?
Yeah, phone.
Oh, okay. Realme. I have a
phone.
Okay. Then how? See, he's there in the chat box. He says, unmute me. Realme.
Unmuted him.
Okay, Mr. Realme, please.
Hello. Sir, this is me, Dr. Neeraj.
Neeraj, you are Realme, is it?
Yes,
okay.
sir.
You are really you.
So,
Okay.
I have only one query, sir, right? Regarding adenoidectomy, since you said it is done based with the endoscopic assisted. Am I right, sir?
Yes, endoscopic assisted curettage or microdebrider, whatever.
Okay, sir. So for beginners, just those who has just completed their PG, they may not be able to do the endoscopy guided, since learning endoscopy is has some higher learning curve. So is there any tricks to do adenoidectomy with endoscopy better way? Is there any way to do better?
Dr. Munkaji, you want to answer that question?
Come again. You said
He says with the endoscope, the juniors are not able to pass the endoscope. Do you have any better way to do it without an endoscope?
I don't.
No, sir. Sorry, sir. I mean to do the endoscopy assisted adenoidectomy.
Yeah, that's right.
But for juniors,
okay.
But for juniors, it won't be so easy to pass the endoscope. So
I think rigid
that.
I think rigid endoscope is good. If you pass through nose, you can visualize the adenoid, and then it is easy to operate. Not difficult. So.
Okay, I'll give you some few tips what we do in our center. Number one is that if the child comes, we'll put the child on Otrivin pediatric nasal drops. Okay, we put the patient on Otrivin pediatric nasal drops, and then we do a little spray of the nose, and then we will. That's available as spray also. Then once the patient is induced, we place packs of Otrivin or oxymetazoline, and that nicely decongest the nose. For children, we always use a 3 millimeter, which is used for an that is an endoscopic ear surgery. We have a 3 millimeter and a 2.4 millimeter scope. So that is what we use, and see from above and put the patient on a reverse Trendelenburg position. That is like a septal correction position, and then put the curette from the mouth and nicely curate it. So the blood will not come into the nose. And that is a beautiful way to do the adenoidectomy. That's the easier way. And if you want to do, so don't put it on the rose position and do it. It's not possible. Then you will have regurgitation of blood into the nose.
Somebody asked about the fiber optic. No, I think endoscope is movable.
We have Dr. Prakash Singh. Dr. Prakash Singh, I'm unmuting you. Dr. Prakar Singh. Yeah, you're unmuted. You can talk, please. You have a question?
So, what drug of choice in acute and chronic tonsillitis?
Can you come on the screen? We are not able to see you, Dr. Prakar Singh. Have you? Where are you? I can't see you.
Yeah, go ahead, doctor.
Yeah, go ahead. You can go ahead.
Yeah.
Now we can see you. Yeah. Now I'm just going to unmute you now. Yeah. I'm unmuting you. Okay, Dr. Mukherjee, you want to answer that question? Hello, Dr. Mukherjee?
Probably she got lost, yeah.
No, she's there.
Okay. Please ask your
So,
question.
what is the
Repeat your
drug?
question.
So, what is the drug of choice in acute and chronic tonsillitis?
Actually, macrolides are supposed to be the good one, but not only antibiotic, along with antibiotic, other measures such as they have got a big role. And I think macrolides works as a first line of drug, and rest depending on the sensitivity, if your experience is different.
In both
That
acute
is-
and chronic?
Yeah, both.
And after surgery, after tonsillectomy?
I don't have any set pattern for antibiotic. So
But do you think
I stick with the macrolides in most of my tonsil cases.
Okay, to answer your question, Dr. Prakash Singh, see, you see the organism which actually is the causative organism for adenoid. You have the H. influenza. For the tonsil, you have the beta hemolytic streptococcus. And these are the commonest organisms causing the infection. So any antibiotic which is going to be against these, like for example, I use a lot of amoxicillin. Amoxicillin clavulanic acid is one of the good drug of choices for me. So that is the kind of antibiotic I choose. Depends on the organism, and you tackle the organism. That is better. So we have Dr. Mahendra Kandasamy. Mahendran Kandasamy. You're unmuted, please. Go ahead. Mr. Mahendran. Mahendran, you're unmuted. Carry on with your question. Dr. Mahendran. Dr. Mahendran, you're unmuted. Hello? Okay, we have one more Zoom.us. I'm just going to unmute that person. I unmuted you. You've raised your hand. I've unmuted you. I can't find your name. My dear friend, Zoom.http 94814. I think it's your phone number, 94814. I've unmuted you. I think you should enter with a name, my dear friend. Then you can actually make us ask your question. Mahendran, I'm unmuting you now. Mahendran Kandasamy, are you there? You've raised your hand.
Actually, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I think Dr. Mukherjee, you want to say some concluding remarks?
I think we had an excellent interaction. I frankly speaking came with just two thoughts that I will make the water clear about the concept of tonsillectomy. And main thing, as I said in the Nagpur, I found some youngster, they say, oh, we cannot do tonsil because we don't have the microscope and cobbletter. And that is what I forced me to go for this topic. And probably I have been successful. It was a great help from your side, being a moderator. And with my net problem, sometimes I was skipping, you have well taken care of. I thank you very much from core of my heart to Mr. Chadda and his whole team of Alembic, and to Dr. Narayan Janki Ram, without which it was just not possible. You made it
sir,
so
I think,
lively.
don't do it. I'm telling you, you are a fantastic speaker. I saw in the whole audience, excellent, extraordinary presentation. You had so many compliments from all over the globe, and you are now you've set the bar very high for all the webinars to come. I just want to mention only one thing, just the last word of remark. On a personal note, I always do a tonsillectomy with a microscope. I do it with a microscope because I see the fibers better. So I do it with a microscope, the tonsillectomy, and that is done in the rose position. And the adenoidectomy, I do it in the reverse Trendelenburg position. So these are the two carry-home messages. I do it with an endoscope, the endoscope adenoids, and the microscope, the tonsil. So with these two concluding remarks, I thank the speaker who gave an excellent talk. I'm really impressed, Dr. Monkaji, and you captured the hearts of many. And of course, Mr. Harpreet is always there for academics. Alembic means academics. Thank you very much, and have a nice day ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you
very much.